Hey everyone, welcome to the Just Pick Something podcast. We like to discuss movies, TV shows. Pretty much movies and TV shows.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, maybe
Okay,
one day we'll do podcast commentary or podcast
we'll talk about
commentary
comic books
episode,
or something else. Shoot, we're branching out a little bit here. All right.
audio drama discussion.
Yeah. Oh my God, did you listen to that audiobook? It was phenomenal.
Ooh, that new Batman audio drama just dropped. Gotta check that
I
out.
heard that it was really good. I haven't tried it yet.
Me either, but yeah, I do also want to listen to that. Not joking aside.
All right, let me try again. Movies, new and old, and TV shows, anything and everything that comes across our table that we like to watch, we'll talk about it. Again, this time we're doing something a little bit different. Typically, we just talk about one movie, but because we're talking about my favorite movie of all time, we also are doing things a little extra. All right, so my favorite movie of all time, first off, is 12 Angry Men, 1957, Henry Fonda, great, awesome. But then in 1997, they remade it. Garbage, terrible. Oh wait, I ruined. I didn't bury the lead. Never mind.
Wow. Dang, coming in hot. I was not expecting that. Cool. All right.
No, I'm kidding. Anyway, but 1957, directed by Sidney Lumet. 1957, directed by Sidney Lumet. The 1997 version, directed by William Friedkin. I'm gonna pretend that that's how it works. It was written by Reginald Rose. It was originally broadcasted in 1954. It was a play first, and at the time of this podcast, you can watch it on Amazon Prime. You can rent it. You can buy the original, which is a good idea. You can rent a remake for way too much money, or you can stream either of them on Tubi for free.
Yeah, that's where I watched it, and I was glad to because it did save me like $6.
It saved you a lot of money, in my opinion. That's way too much. I did not bury the lead. Okay, so first off, I love the original movie, 1957, 12 Angry Men, Henry Fonda. Love that movie. Like a little background because this is 100% my favorite movie. So like I have to get into it a little bit.
Okay, no, dude, I want to hear it, man. Share.
Okay, so it's crazy. The history I have with this movie is insane, to me at least, because I had the first time watching this movie was in second grade. Which is like, yo, like you watched 12 Angry Men when you were in 7, 8? Like, yes, I did.
I have movies like that too.
Right? And it's like I was in the gifted program. I had just gotten into it the first day that I was in it. They're like, okay, we're watching 12 Angry Men. And I'm like, all right, cool, dope, whatever this is, I'll watch it. We watch this movie, and I'm like, this is my favorite movie of all time. I'm 7, 8 years old. I have decided this. It is set in stone. No one will ever upheave this movie, whatever. Next day, what was that movie we watched yesterday? I don't remember the title. But I stayed with it. I was like, no matter what movie came out that was like way better in my like to anybody else, I would still be like, yeah, this is great. My favorite movie is still 12 Angry Men. Oh, your favorite movie is Iron Man? Cool. 12 Angry Men. Your favorite movie is Godfather? 12 Angry Men. And it's not like a purist thing. Like it wasn't like a classical movie thing. Like I found out later in life that people are like, oh, this movie is like a film nerd, like purist type film that they point to. And I'm like, no, I had no idea about any of that stuff. It was literally, I watched it in second grade, never stopped thinking about it, never knew the title, and was like constantly like, it was this movie. This movie was my favorite. And to the point where my brother found it when I was in high school and bought me a DVD copy. And after that, I was able to like actually like, oh my God, like I know it is inside and out. I watched it like every day when I got home from school. Like it is not, I do not say that it is my favorite movie with any like little bit of like, like some people are like casually, oh yeah, this is my favorite movie. Like, no. Like it is a passionate point that this is my favorite movie. Like if you're like, oh, Anthony, rank your favorite movies, 12 Angry Men is always at the top, along with some other weird movies that like you would totally not think that I would put with that film. It's like, what's your favorite movie, Anthony? It's like, oh, well, 12 Angry Men. Scott Pilgrim's in there.
Good choice. Yeah, it's a great movie.
Moulin Rouge, Mulan, just a bunch of movies that it's like, and 12 Angry Men. 12 Angry Men's the one that stays, though. Like, no matter what, always at number one. It never shifts. So it's one of those things where, for me, it was always crazy. It was just a movie that it was a movie that I watched one time, and I could never get out of my head. And I was like 7, dude. Like it was fundamental, like in regards to my movie watching and how I view movies today.
I mean, it's a really good movie to show, I guess, a kid because at least the 1957 version, like it's not inappropriate for a child to watch, but it's also like really well done in terms of commentary, and like a kid can pick up all the little details and stuff and be like, oh, I'm glad these angry men are trying to get just. And then as an adult, you can be like, oh wow, I see a lot of like commentary and societal representation and troubles at the time, and the inherent, like, I don't know, value in depicting something like this movie. But yeah, I'm not surprised it hit so well for you as a kid. It's a really good movie. I'm glad I watched it.
Yeah, no, I've recommended it so many times over the years, and I've never met anybody who's actively been like, "This is my favorite movie,"
Mhm.
which is fine. Like a lot of people, again, it's more of like I think it's more. I guess it's a film student type of film because it's like, oh, there's a lot of like craftsmanship that goes into this film that like really stands the test of time,
It
and
does, yeah.
that it's just one of those things where it's like, oh, it's kind of a snobbish answer. 12 Angry Men, like, oh yeah, oh, obviously 12 Angry Men.
I don't think it's that snobbish, man. It's a solid movie.
Yeah, well, I think that's like, yeah, it's just a film that like I don't hear a lot of people talk about it, and when people do, it's usually in that vein
Well,
where it's like, I mean, like you only like that because you're a film person, and as a film person, yes, 100%, but it got me to be a film person, so like I guess that's fair.
yeah, well, I think, I didn't watch this movie until this episode. I've never seen it, heard of it, because it's such a famous movie, right? Never really knew much about it. And then when I watched it and sat down and enjoyed it, right, I realized that this movie has been parodied or referenced or inspired like a lot of episodes of TV or other like movies. First one that came to mind was there was an episode of Malcolm in the Middle where the mom Lois had to go to court, and like they had a whole 12 Angry Men episode. And I really liked that episode. And it wasn't until I watched this movie, I was like, they were referencing this movie. Okay.
Without having known that it was like so popular, right?
Hmm.
And like I didn't, again, it like hit me when I was older that it was like this big thing.
Hmm.
Like freaking there's an issue of Batman where where they have a 12 Angry Men plot. And I was like, where Batman goes in because he beat up Mr. Freeze, and he's like, oh well, actually I found out later that Mr. Freeze is innocent. So now I gotta be on the jury to convince everybody else that Mr. Freeze is innocent. Like I love 12 Angry Men references. Please give me more.
Yeah,
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 like
dude. Like,
they're in a bunch of it's referenced like in The Simpsons.
it's
And
been adapted into other play performances around the world.
yep, a huge. It's way bigger than I ever thought it was, and
Yeah, Family Guy did it. King of the Hill did it. I mean, I don't know. Name a TV show, they might have done it. Like it.
most times if anybody ends up on a court on a jury, they riff off of 12 Angry Men.
Yeah, Murder She Wrote did it.
Yep,
Yeah, I mean,
you love me some Murder She
yeah,
Wrote. That is really good.
yeah. I mean, it's like the play. It's so easy to adapt and kind of like stands the test of time because it's kind of like one of those things that where if you start becoming an adult and you start learning about the criminal justice system, right? And you hear about all the like horrible examples of trials being kind of swayed, or the judge being corrupt or this and that or whatever, right? You kind of like hope that the brave guy that stands like his morals or something and is like, I don't think we
Yeah.
should be trivializing this matter. There's a man's life at stake. It's inspirational. You want this to be a thing, inspire people to take things like that seriously, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, unsurprisingly, 1957, 1997, and it's pretty obvious that like, yeah, this is great material to adapt.
Yeah, no, it's I just because it is. I'll never stop singing the praises of this movie. But you mentioned it where it's like the conflict of the story is a guy trying to convince a bunch of people of whether or not this person can be convicted guilty, right? If I will say this. If there's anything I can say about this movie negative, it's that I mean maybe that's not the best thing to do. Sometimes people are just guilty, and
Yeah, yeah. Well,
we don't know if this kid is actually innocent or not. We hope.
yeah. I mean,
We hope to God. We were convinced.
true, true. I mean, okay, so it is pretty clear that they make a point to show in the movies, both adaptations, right? That the way the juror that objects, I don't remember the number he is, maybe 12, Henry Fonda's character,
Eight.
the way juror 8 presents that knife and is like, I found this knife, and they're like, you can't do that. That's not legally precedent. You can't just go get a knife, bring it, and be like, here's evidence to like sway our opinion or something. And I'm not sure how accurate that is. They do make it kind of a point in the movies that this wouldn't happen in a normal, whatever the meeting is called, where they decide that the defendant is guilty or not guilty. It's very movie, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, 100%.
yeah, like it's all exaggerated, inspirational on purpose.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this was a great movie. I really liked it. I could have sworn that like I recognized his name from somewhere, and it wasn't until I realized that like he's the dad of Jane Fonda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, well, you should recognize Henry Fonda's name because he's a big actor for his time. But yeah, you know,
Dude, I just haven't seen that many old classic movies that he's been in, you know? Like the name Fonda, my first thought is Jane Fonda.
that's fair.
Yeah. And
I mean, you should also recognize at least, most people should recognize at least one of the other jurors. I don't know if you recognize them after the fact or during the film. If you
which one?
juror number, was it? He was 2. Juror number 2.
John Fielder?
I'm not going to pretend like I remember what his name is.
Okay.
You'll remember his most iconic role though.
What is it?
Piglet.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yep.
okay, cool.
He was the voice of Piglet.
I didn't recognize that, man. That's pretty neat.
It was one of those things where that was one of the things that I learned when I was a kid was like, oh, this is Piglet. And I was like, oh yeah, it totally is. You can hear it in his voice very clearly.
You know, it's really funny. I didn't recognize him, but there was another juror I thought I recognized for a brief minute. I kept trying to place it, and I was like, why does this guy look so familiar? William Dafoe? No, but this man looks so much like William Dafoe. He's just, for some reason, my brain was like, I think that's William Dafoe.
Interesting.
Mhm.
But like, yeah, no, man, there's so much I could say about the original version that I love, and like from like pretty much every aspect. There is a reason that again we talk. I keep on mentioning the film student thing. It is very good to go back to like just look at how they do it, because the way they filmed back in the day was obviously more economic in regards to like we can't do a lot of flashy cuts, can't do a lot of flashy camera angles. This was filmed in 2 rooms. It's basically a bottle room episode.
Yeah.
Well, there's like a moment in the courtroom and outside of the courtroom, but for the most part, the entirety of the film is.
Well, comparing both films, right? You can kind of tell they were done a little bit on like the cheap, because one location, like a group of actors. It works so well as an adaptation of a play.
Yeah.
Because it also makes sense as a play, like you have one set, one room that you could see everything as an audience member, right?
You can maybe move them over to the side for like one scene, and that's about it.
Yes, characters can like step forward to the stage and take like an aside or something with a spotlight on them. The thing I really liked about the 1957 version of 12 Angry Men was I think there was a little more creative cinematography with angles and close-ups and what the camera focused on compared to the television adaptation in 1997. Yeah. Like there was more contrast in the characters and the lighting in the 1957 version in comparison to the 1997 version. You could tell that the 1997 version was very much a TV adaptation where the camera was a little more shaky. It felt a little more like, bare bones, and like the way they kind of followed the characters and what they chose to focus on. It was really cool seeing that distinction between the 2 films.
Yeah, so the 1956 version was very different in regards to at least cinematography, as well as, and this is something that a lot of people don't pay attention to because obviously it's not like a huge thing that people talk about. Like when people talk about cinematography, they're like, oh man, like the shot was perfect. It's like, all right, cool. Yeah, but like what goes into that shot, and with 12 Angry Men, a very specific thing that they did perfectly was the staging, right? Where it's like there's the shot where all 11 jurors are on one side of the room, and the one that the juror number 3 that they're arguing with, right, is on the other, and they have an iconic shot of all 11 just looking at him. They have every character placed so perfectly and in a pose and position where it's like you can understand where they're like you understand a little bit more about their character from this one shot.
Right.
And it's one of those things where like in the newer version, the 96 version, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you guys took a way more modern take on it. You have more tricks and things that you can do with the camera and more free room to play with in regards to like how you use your time. And I mean, it wasn't used well. If you, I'm like, so if you want to like, I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna segue to the newer one,
Okay, okay.
because obviously I keep on I keep on like shooting it while it's down, kind of thing.
Yeah, okay.
One of the things I will say about the new one, which is insane, like it's just phenomenal in regards to like if the 1956 version was like just like
Mhm.
all-star people that you like will see in a bunch of other classic films
Yeah.
right at the time, like the 96 version is that for like TV.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's true. There was some big like names in the TV version too. It was also really cool how they modernized it a little bit by adding a more diverse cast,
Yes.
which really changed the motivation and the meaning behind some of the characters, like upbringings or thought patterns, or just I guess the most recognizable difference in terms of who that character is as at his core was Juror 10, the man who had like a racist bias towards the
Yep.
case.
And then they changed him into a black man,
Yeah,
and
not only that, but it was the original movie, which was an old white man, versus
yep,
the 1997 TV version, which was an older black man,
yep.
which is a huge difference in like reasoning why he's so racially biased. You
Yeah,
know?
it's crazy to see, like, because it just changes the context
Yeah.
because, like, so much. Because, like, on the old one, it's understandable. This guy, even if it's not necessarily racist, because, like, we don't know too much about the kid, right?
Oh, okay. So in the 57, I really enjoyed the subtext in the original black and white
Yeah,
movie. I really wanted to pay attention to see if at any point they outright said the race of the person, but
yeah.
it was all very much implied like, oh yeah, he's, underprivileged, he's from the slums, he like, it's kind of
One of them.
one of them, the other, right? And then it
Yeah,
was just kind of letting your brain fill in what it could possibly be.
yeah.
And then, like, you finally get some confirmation of that towards the later half of the movie. But in the TV version, they outright have it in color.
Yeah.
Juror number 10 specifically dropped some very old school, like, slurs at that defendant. Like, I haven't heard that slur in, like, quite a long time, you know?
It's because yeah, the original. I think you see one shot of the kid.
Mm-hmm.
He's ethnically ambiguous. Maybe
Yeah,
like
mm-hmm. Black and white, so it's hard to
yeah.
tell skin color or tone.
Arguably, like maybe because based on the time period, like Italian, Hispanic.
Could be Italian, could be like Irish, could be
Yeah.
Hispanic, like immigrant, especially since it feels like it takes place in New Jersey, New York kind of area.
And so with that, it was very much like, okay, so we have to get it from context. Like
Hmm.
we can apply it to modern day relations, but in that one, it's very far more subtle. And the new one, because of the color, yeah, it was just very obvious. It was like we made specific choices
Hmm.
to highlight these dynamics, and to change that juror specifically to an older black man is both a fantastic choice because it does shift that dynamic so much, but also it's like it's interesting, but it weirdly like I feel like it takes away from that
Really,
dynamic in the original.
I kind of liked it more.
Really?
That's yeah. Okay, I'll let you say yours first, and then I'll say mine, and then because I have some good reasons behind it. Okay.
No, no, yeah. So I like the idea that it kind of is. It's not like a self-hate thing, but it's more of like a generational. If to me, it comes more across like a generational thing.
The 1957 version.
No, the newer version, 1997, right? Where
Okay.
it's like this is an older black man speaking on a younger black man and
Hmm.
talking about like the people that he sees running around now, right? Where
Hmm.
he's like, "Oh, my view of this is entirely generational. Like, oh, these kids, like these thugs. I wasn't like this kind like, like it was more of like an otherness that was different from the older one. The older one was very clearly like, oh, like I have like some racial ethnic like divide, and I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
clear cutness was very poignant in that version because it was a good moment for the time period. It was a really good moment to be like, yo, like yeah, we don't mess with that. Like that's not okay.
I
Yeah,
mean, that moment was so powerful when all the jurors stood up and just faced away from him in
yeah.
the black and white version.
Mhm.
Like it was so well where they almost like did it like dominoes, where each one stood up and turned away as he continued his like racist rants about the other that he views as inferior or whatever.
Yeah, and so I don't feel that moment is you don't get that same level of moment with the new one. where the emotion hits that hard, because the response from the characters is still not great. Like, like they're like, "Yo,
Yeah.
we're not cool with this," but
Mhm.
it's a very different "we're not cool with this" than when you're like, "Yo, you're being a racist old dude, and we need you to stop." And with the newer one, it's more of like, "Yes, no, that's not okay."
Yeah, totally get that. I think the reason for me why it hit better, or not better, but in a different way that I enjoyed a little more,
Okay.
was that, like, I think it's extremely powerful that the man who did it was, an older black man who's having this racing tyrant, because it felt so just hurtful
Yeah.
towards everyone else in the room who was also not white,
Yeah.
where it's kind of like it feels like a bigger betrayal, where these characters in this room, because of the characters that they're depicting, right, they all seem to have come from a lifestyle that, like, maybe the kid could have been one of them almost, right? Because you have a watchmaker who looks like he could be a foreigner. You have another black character who's trying to lead everyone and have a clear, respectful discussion. You have more of a diverse presence. So when this man goes on such a racist tyrant of like this, bigotry, right? It just feels like shock and betrayal at the gall of this guy to say such hurtful things.
Yeah, like when we're like in the room with him.
Yeah, yeah, and it's kind of like a form of racism that you don't get commentary on as much as like the old school racism that you saw in the 1957 version, right?
Yeah.
Where, like, at that time, if it's great to see someone acknowledge the fact that this older white man is out of his depth, he's gone with the times, he needs to catch up to modern society, right?
Yeah.
But in the 1997 version, it is relatively modern society compared to the time difference between the original, right? So it's kind of like a disappointing acknowledgement that things haven't changed as much as you would hope. And if anything, there's just this unfortunate, I don't know, supremacy among, like, minority communities that is kind of just sad to see still. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I get that, and I appreciate that take. Again, I think it's a very man. That is a bold choice to make when you change that character, right?
Yeah, dude, especially the response after the fact,
Yeah.
right? In the 1957 version of that juror felt he was more ashamed that everyone else didn't see his way. Where in this 1997 version, it looked like he was just like, yeah, I'm doubling down. I don't care if you guys think I'm racist. I said what I said. Deal with it, but I'll vote not guilty. Like, it doesn't feel like the characters around him won. It just feel like an unfortunate resignation of defeat and being like, fine.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's what it is. Like, there's like a moral victory in the 52nd and the 56th version.
Yeah, it's inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, and this, there's always arguments that this is like a white savior kind of film, because it is like a white guy arguing in behalf of minority, yada yada blah blah blah. So I guess there's like that aspect of the version where it's
Yeah,
like, yeah,
yeah.
no, like my white saviorness is like, it's just raging right now. I love this. I'm green booking it up. But
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a thing that you apply, but it's also like it's a different time where
yeah,
you just wanted more diversity in movies in the 50s and you just didn't get it, so you just kind of took what you can get, right?
yeah, and but like
Like,
it was certain, like I think, like while there was obviously, like, there's a response by juror number 4 or something like that, where they're like he takes it very personally, because it's like,
yeah,
oh, you're talking about like me right now, like I'm one of those
yeah,
guys.
dude, shit, man, I took it personally, and like
Oh
if it was, like it was just like, God, this guy sucks, you know?
yeah. I mean, in both movies, I think that's the case. But like, I think, yeah, like, I think when you change it and you make more of the cast diverse, I think just diluting that moment, right? Like, I think
Yeah.
it was just a simple, clean moment in a filmmaking sense, and a writing and directing and staging and all that. That like
Mhm.
changing it it's crazy. Like, it just adds a little bit more depth to it, where it's like, and I think there's also a point to be made where it's like story is a little bit more tragic as well as a little bit more inspirational. Where in the original version, it's mostly people who aren't of this kid's race
Mhm.
who are arguing for him, and it's like one of those things where it's like, yeah, no, like historically speaking, a jury of your peers doesn't necessarily mean your peer. So with
Yeah.
the new
Yeah.
one, it's more of like, oh well, some of these people are actually like from the same community, like they have the same background, like they're of the
Yeah.
same race, and it's like it changes the dynamics a little bit.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I mean, I want to, like, I would love to see a newer version, only
I
because
I actually would love to see a newer version. Okay, 2027. Let's go. Come on. I need another 12 Angry Men adaptation in 2027.
Yeah, no, well, 2037, right? Because 40 years.
Yeah, yeah, sure. 2047, 2027. I just want to see another adaptation of this because, like, okay, so in a weird way, I totally agree with what you're putting down about the dynamics being changed a bit, which leads to, kind of a different interpretations of like jury of your peers kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it is showing, I guess, in the TV version that the diversity that has always existed in that region of like New York, New Jersey, is actually more represented than the TV version than the 1957 version. Because like there's actual people of color who have always been around in that city forever,
Yeah.
And I guess it's more just like who they chose to feature this time. Where maybe in the 57 version you'd be like, oh yeah, maybe it's more like European immigrants, and now it's more just like diverse people completely, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really interesting to see the changes, and man, it would be so good to see another adaptation of this in like modern times, right?
Yeah, and I say that because it'd be really cool because like one, I want a better director handling this film, but also it's like yeah, like you said, like like the modernization of the '97 version
Mhm.
is like oh well, like it's modern, we can have a more diverse cast, and we understand a little bit more dynamics of it a little bit better. And it's like imagine today we do that, and you're like, well, I mean, we take it a step forward, right? Like
Yeah.
we like the movie's called 12 Angry Men.
Mhm.
But we don't need only men, right? Like we can
Yeah, a
have
100%. That'd be my first go to be like diverse cast in terms of modern day context, right? Oh,
we changed the people involved, we changed race, we can yeah, like no, like the dynamic will be like sexuality, all these things could be changed.
yeah,
And
yeah. I mean,
it would be way
they made the judge a woman in the
yeah.
97 version, which was dope. Okay, I have a funny thing you could add to the modern interpretation of this with one object. I think it'd be funny to modernize the air conditioner like they did in the in the films.
Oh man.
Like the fan was a funny moment in the 57 version because at that time air conditioning was still blowing up all over the world, right? So it
Yeah.
was really funny to see the fan, right? And then in the 97 version it was like, oh look, the AC works, right? And I feel like in the modern movie it could be like, oh hey, just open a window, turn off the AC, we got to save energy or greenhouse emissions or something, right? Like the little thing would be like,
Oh yeah, no, no, it's super hot, and you find out
mhm,
that it was actually yeah. There's a character there that
mhm.
purposely turned off the AC and opened up the windows because they were like, "Well, I wasn't gonna turn it on. We didn't need it."
Yeah. See, that'd be a great way to modernize it a little bit too.
Yeah, like, but yeah, back to the '97 version. I mean, like, I appreciate like the actors involved. It's a great story still. Like, it's not gonna change, but it's like the there's a dynamism of the original that I think the newer one lacks, both from like a cinematography standpoint and like a staging point,
Yeah.
as well as just the line reads. I just don't think are as strong.
Oh, dude, the performances were very much, especially when you watch them back to back or like near each other in terms
Yeah,
of watching. I kind of wish there was an amalgamation of aspects of some of the performances in the first movie and the performances in the second one.
yeah,
Like, for example, in near the end of the 1957 version, you have that like finishing speech of the remaining juror that still won't vote for not guilty, right? How he's going
yeah.
on.
I did that monologue actually. I did that monologue in my drama class.
Really,
Yep.
it's a solid monologue, dude. I'm not
Um,
surprised. I hope you killed it because it's great. It's a great monologue.
I did. Well, what did the when he like yells at them like in the near the very end of it because I'm doing the monologue in like a small room. I like the entire room jumped when I did it, and I was like, "Bruh, this is great."
Hell yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I in the 57 version, I really like how he took out the wallet. He was so animated with his movements and like props and stuff. You saw the like picture of him and his boy, and like it was very much implied, and you got it from like context what it was actually trying to say, right?
Yeah.
And then in the 1997 version, I really liked how emotional and raw the actor got, where he started to cry a little bit compared to like the quiet sadness of the 57 version. I really liked that both performances. I just wish that in the 97 version, the juror after wasn't like, but he's not your boy, Like it was kind of like a little on the nose,
Yeah.
right? It was like,
There's like on the nose things. It's like it's just subtle stuff, man. Like
yeah,
they just add like a little bit too much to it where I'm like, yeah, no, we didn't need that.
yeah. It was like we didn't need it. It was so good, and it almost robbed it a little bit of that impact. You know?
Yeah, it's like a
I got it. I know he was talking about how this could be his boy. He didn't have to point it out, but yeah.
say with the same juror number 3, and Henry Fonda's character 7, I think.
Mhm.
I'm sure he has a name, and I've watched this movie so many times that I should remember his name. But
Uh,
God, I will tell you that I won't even like. Again, I'm struggling with the juror numbers.
I mean, it's like 12 jurors across 2 movies, so 24 jurors. You know,
Yeah, so I'm trying
it's
to like remember it over the top of my head, but
mhm.
the moment with the knife where they're like testing out like doing the stabbing thing. But so yeah, Henry Fonda and the one who holds out until the very end. I don't remember which one is which. But so when they have the moment where he's like, I'll kill you," and like, "Oh,
Oh,
you don't really mean you'll kill me, do you?" And like just like that, like that like confrontation and the delivery of those lines in the original.
yeah.
When I saw it in the new one, I almost laughed at how the new one did it because that was not even close to as good. Come on.
Yeah, yeah, like the delivery on some of the lines were so much better in the 57 version. Like the moment where the character was talking about how the person on trial can't even speak English properly. The other guy corrects his English, and it's just that like awkward moment. It's, oh, shut up, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, moments like that. It's just, man, there was just really good performances in like the 57 version, but there were also some really good performances in the 97 version. And like you're right, it was a really big who's who of television
Yeah.
actors. You know, like James Gandolfini.
Freaking Tony Soprano.
Yeah, yeah. Edward James Olmos. You know, oh man, like there were some big actors at that
That
time.
was a big get right there. Yeah. I think
You know, I feel like I really like James Fonda's performance in the 57. Or sorry, not James Fonda. I combined Jane Fonda's name and him. Henry Fonda's performance in the 57 version. Like he was such a good lead for that movie.
did such a good job.
Hmm.
Like I don't think it works as well if you don't have James Fonda. I think like to prove to again go back to the differences. I don't think it works as well in the newer version because it just doesn't work
Hmm.
in regards to it doesn't work in regards to how like his performances doesn't carry the film like Henry Fonda does.
Yeah, there was some performances in the 57 version where you just kind of felt the character of who the person is a little more clearly through context. There was one of the jurors felt a little more like, I don't know, I guess you could say shy or meek or maybe cowardly, and felt very inspirational when he would stand up for himself or talk back to someone, or like the quiet emerging of some of the characters' opinions, or how some of the characters, you know, were initially not taking seriously and then they started taking seriously. Like it was really good performances in the 57 version, and it felt like it was a little less that in the 97 version, right?
Yeah.
Like James Gandolfini did great as his character in the 97 version. I really liked how he had that role of the New Yorker character, I guess, from the 57 version. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, hey, he went out to be on The Sopranos, so I guess it makes sense.
Okay, so just because I randomly was like, I could have swore there was a piece of trivia about the new one
Mhm.
that was like really like about how, like who played who.
Mhm.
None of that matters. What I found was super interesting was the director of the '97 version was inspired by the O.J. Simpson murder trial and the fallout of his acquittal
Oh,
in conceiving the update of the plot.
wow, that is a huge inspirational difference behind the 97 version. But I guess that's also pretty topical of the time, this 90s. Wait, does that mean that the 57 version was inspired by something also topical at that time?
I have no idea. That's a good question.
I mean, that could.
You're about to learn.
I mean, I'm really curious now too.
I saw some other facts, but none of them were as interesting as that. But mostly about like, oh, these people.
So in looking that up, right? The director Reginald Rose, right? He wrote a bunch of stage adaptations of the story.
Yeah.
So there were some theatrical adaptations that had like all female cast. Like some of the sometimes the play was retitled 12 Angry Jurors, 12 Angry Men and Women, 12 Angry Women, etc. You know, like that was pretty cool. And like from there, I just keep saying about all the different adaptations that went on to be You know, like even the audio version for like radio in like the
I know
2000s.
there's a lot. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Mhm.
Next one, 12 Angry Mexicans.
I mean, there were all like foreign adaptations, so that might have been a thing.
Yeah, there was a Russian one. Yeah,
I think a German one too, a Hindi one in India.
I mean, like it's a good,
Oh, a
good,
Chinese one called 12 Citizens.
interesting. That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, dude, solid movie. I can see why this is one of your favorite like movies. It was really good. You can just not having seen it now, man. Like its impact on pop culture is so felt. Like it's in so many inspirational things in movies and TV shows nowadays. Over time, especially like that one Malcolm in the Middle episode I told you about.
And okay, look, this is the first for like the first piece of trivia, and this is just like a dedication to what the heck they're doing in the film, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like at the beginning of the film, the cameras are all positioned above eye level and mounted with wide angle lenses to give the appearance of greater distance between the subject. As the film progresses, the camera slips down to eye level, and by the end of the film, nearly all of it is shot below eye level in close up and with telephoto lenses to increase the encroaching sense of claustrophobia.
Yeah, see that's pretty dope. I like that. It's kind of like hearing, or it's kind of like the idea of like good CGI versus bad CGI. When it's good, you don't notice it, but it's great and adds a lot to the film. And when it's bad, you really notice it and it takes you out of it. And like I really appreciated the film camera work in the 57 version. It made a huge difference in terms of the quality of the film too.
They stay on moments just a little bit longer. You get to feel the weight of certain lines and like how it's very important. It's like it's very specific how they decide to direct the characters. That like like the 97 version is more modern and there's like a lot more flourishes that you'll get from a newer film. But there are times where I was like, you didn't need to cut to a reaction or anything right there. Like you need to like the musical notes like were just like a little off. It was just it's a very nuanced difference.
I did like the
huge
score.
change.
The score was really nice in the 57 version compared to the TV. But like
Oh yeah.
it was also a TV adaptation versus a movie adaptation, right? So like it gets a little leeway for me in terms of that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, I'm not gonna
Like I think I would return to the 57 version probably more than I would the 97 version. It's not bad, and I would definitely recommend it maybe just to compare the two, but the 57 version is just so solid. It's like it feels like it's an obvious classic.
I think the main reason you watch the newer version is to compare it and to just see the difference that just small choices make. The way that like the reason I want like a newer version, but I want it. I like when I want a newer version of this film, I want like the way Spielberg did West Side Story, because West Side Story feels like it was shot with like a level of grandeur that you don't get in a lot of modern day film, right? With a lot of the newer techniques of doing it. It felt classic. I don't know if you watched Spielberg's West Side Story.
No, I really want to watch it because
It's phenomenal. Watch it.
I really, it's on my list to watch. It's because one of the reasons I really wanted to watch it is because it has Rita Moreno.
Okay.
Like she plays Valentina.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, she has such an interesting like life in the film industry, and like I'm really excited to see her because she was in the original too. She played Anita in the original West Side Story in 1961. So yeah, I'm excited to see that movie eventually, and I'm glad to hear it's really good.
I think it's very much one of my favorite movies from last year. I think it's definitely I think a lot of people it's okay. This is a version. If we're gonna talk about like the differences that you make in terms of ethnicity and like diversity and all that stuff in regards to your film, West Side Story is how you do it. I feel like this is the right way to do it, right? In the sense that the first one had similar, topics of like racial and ethnic issues and stuff like that, commentary. But like it wasn't really like a focus. And while it's still not a focus in the new one, they do a lot of work to take that into account when the characters ask for characters. Where like, okay, for example, obviously Maria and her family and the sharks are all Puerto Rican. So there's a good portion of them when they're in private where they speak Spanish, right? In the original film, they don't. They're all mostly white actors. Well, I think, they're pretty much almost all entirely white actors in brown face, issue in and of itself. But the new one is like, no. We take into account that these characters are Hispanic. We
Yeah.
take that into account to their dynamics in regards to how they talk to each other, how their conversations take part. Like it's entirely different, and it's also funny. I don't know if you watch Into the Heights.
I did, dude. I really liked Into the Heights. It was a good movie.
Yeah, in the Heights or it's in the Heights. Yeah.
In the
So
Heights. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so it's crazy watching West Side Story and then remembering and or watching In the Heights next because they're about very similar groups of people and the issues that they are facing as like as like a community. It's like, yo,
Mhm.
like, is this ever gonna stop?
Dude, I mean, dude, it's the same feeling about 12 Angry Men. Like, it's thing about being like, damn, dude, it really sucks that like it's timeless because it keeps being relevant in terms of society. Because it's like great, but it's also sad and it sucks because it's like, oh man, you don't want, young immigrant men or impoverished people being tried and sentenced to death for a crime they might not have committed, right, with a jury that's very biased and has their own issues and that they bring to the court case. It's like it's not a fun thing to still be a thing. It
Yeah,
sucks.
no, and that's crazy. Again, crazy to like watch a movie that came 40 years after it and be like, yeah, no, like some of this still kind of it still stings, and we're watching it 30 years after that. So you're talking about
Yeah,
like, oh, like
and
this sucks. So like watch like it's crazy because you'll see like going back to West Side Story, you'll see characters in West Side Story that are like the age that the grandma was when she came to America and in the Heights.
mhm.
So they'll be talking about how what her and her mom used to do for work and stuff like that when she was younger. And I was like, oh my God, like it's crazy to think of like the generations and how much like stuff has shifted, but like how much stuff has stayed the same. And like
Yeah, the institutional oppression that faces a lot of
yeah,
people.
so like that's why I want to see this movie in a new one because one, it gets you like fresh eyes on it, but two, it's not a flashy movie. It doesn't need to be a flashy movie, and I want to see someone who just like takes reverence in the simplicity of the story. I don't know if you ever watched the movie Fences.
With Denzel Washington, right?
Yeah, and
Hmm.
I don't particularly like Fences as a film, only because it is way
Hmm.
better as a play. But like, there's a certain level of like care that goes into making a film that
Hmm.
it's just people talking in a singular space and being able.
I mean, those moments are really good, especially when they're delivered by two actors who can deliver dialogue heavy scenes like that,
Yeah.
right?
So it's just, man, I love this movie. I think everybody should watch it at some point. Whether or not they
I
think it's
mean,
their favorite movie of all time, that's fine.
I love this movie too. I agree with you, man. It's a great watch. I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, I mean,
I can see why it's so personal. It's such a good movie.
yeah, and you have reason to recommend. I only recommend the newer one for the comparison. I'm trying to see. I was trying to find something interesting about the trivia, just to add extra stuff. But
There's one that it's hard to say how factual this is because it's from Wikipedia, right? So I guess the fact I have that you should take with a grain of salt is apparently Sonia Sotomayor says that seeing 12 Angry Men when she was in college influenced her decision to pursue a career in law. So that's kind of neat.
that is cool, and
Yeah.
that's good. That's great. Freaking, that's awesome. I mean, again, like this was such an influential film to me that like hearing that kind of stuff is
Hmm.
so crazy because like, man, I like it took me a long time to realize, and this is going back to the personal, like it took me a long time to realize how much of an impact this film had on me as a kid because I don't know how I was as a kid before it. I guess like I have like bits and pieces of memory, but I remember this movie so clearly and how Henry Fonda's character acted so clearly that I was like, no, like this guy, this is how it's supposed to be. Like they like you should be taking up like taking up the case of like trying to like look out for those people who are in situations that are less fortunate and like you can't just assume the worst of people and
Hmm.
treat them that way based off anything and like like whether that's some of these people are like oh they don't care like they're racially biased or one reason or another it's like so like I remember that very clearly as a child and then growing up and then when watching it again as an adult being like yo like this is like a very clear like moment for me in my fundamental growth as a human being.
That's dude, that's awesome. I can't wait to watch another movie that like hits you like that. I know the next one we're probably gonna do is one that is that way for me, which is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? But like, man, I'm so excited to talk about that movie. And you haven't seen that movie, have you?
I've watched parts.
Okay.
I've watched. There's like a scene near the end. I think I also saw a bit of when they sing a song.
Men of Constant Sorrow.
Yeah, and so I saw like parts, like bits and pieces. And I've never watched the movie entirely. I know it's based off of like Odysseus.
It's based off the Odyssey. You know, Homer's the Odyssey.
Yeah, so I'm hyped for that.
Dude, I'm so excited to talk to you about that movie. But I guess this is a good point to wrap this one up and say like, thank you for listening to this episode of the Just Pick Something podcast. Check out 12 Angry Men. We both really liked it. Clearly, this is a really big influential movie for Franco. But you know, aside from that, super good watch. And we think you should probably check out the 1957 version and also, you know, the 1997 version too, just to compare it. But with that, the intro and outro song of this podcast is VHS Dreams by Sean Ivers. Link in the description. And thank you for listening to this episode of the Just Pick Something podcast. And until next time.